The Bengals might be done with external free agent additions. Let's talk about their free agency haul and what the one move we want them to make might be.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. I'm your host, Jake Lisco. He's your host, James Rapine. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and you can follow this podcast anywhere you get your podcasts and subscribe on YouTube. Hit the bell, and you'll get those notifications when we upload our content, and you'll be able to join that first listen club. And James, today we're going to do a bit of a retrospective on free agency, as it's likely that the Bengals are done making at least major moves. There could be a couple of smaller moves still coming, and we're talking external free agents here because I think that extensions still very much on the mind of the front office. But when we look at free agency on the whole,
real quick before we do that, I just want to congratulate big Bengals fan, hopefully Locked On Bengals listener, UConn head coach Dan Hurley winning the Natty. It seems like every 4 or 5 years UConn's winning a national championship during my lifetime, and Hurley just happens to be a Bengals fan. So who knows? Maybe he's a listener of the podcast. So congratulations. If so, if not, still congrats, because that's a hell of an accomplishment.
For sure. Always nice to see the extended Bengals fan family doing cool things like winning national championships.
Yeah. It's pretty cool.
Pretty cool thing.
Hopefully we can do that one day.
I would like to win a national championship. What are we going to win a national championship in?
No idea, but hopefully.
Yeah, we got to figure that out.
Hope.
So, Bengals free agency, mostly done. We can probably agree. There may be some hope for some moves that we'll talk about a little bit as well. But to summarize, 4 major departures: Jessie Bates, Von Bell, Hayden Hurst, Samaje Perine, probably in order of how major each of those departures was. 2 safeties that were starting for the team, the starting tight end, and RB2, who outsnapped RB1 nearly 2-1 in the AFC Championship game. So clearly these are players that the Bengals liked and used and thought very highly of, and at different times tried to get deals done with to different degrees of effort. Jessie Bates, obviously long extension talks. Von Bell, they tried to bring back. He got more money elsewhere. Samaje Perine decided to go out to Colorado, and Hayden Hurst just got a little bit more money from the Panthers. No doubt in my mind, the Bengals would have liked all these players back. Couldn't get the deals done. So they have all that money to use, and instead of using it on those 4 players, they do manage to retain on a pretty big deal Jermaine Pratt, 3 years, just under $21 million. A bunch of lower level 1-year kind of deals for veterans and restricted free agents: Cal Adamitis, Joe Bacci, Jalen Davis, safety Mike Thomas, Travion Williams, Trent Taylor, Max Sharping. Back on 1-year deals for the most part, a 2-year deal for Jalen Davis. And then the big moves, of course: Orlando Brown, Nick Scott, the 2 bigger external free agents. Irv Smith, a bigger one in terms of the role he might play, if not the money, getting paid less than $2 million for his 1-year deal. Sidney Jones for depth at corner, and Cody Ford for depth at guard. So and Terrell Basham, who of course we talked about yesterday, for some edge depth. So, of course, some work to do in the draft, but they kind of did what we wanted them to do in terms of they're going into the draft without major starting needs. Mm-hmm. So you give them credit for that at the very least.
Yeah, I think that and I've thought a lot about this. I think the Bengals are better today than they were when they left Arrowhead in the AFC Championship game. And that might be a take to some. But how often over the past 2 years in particular would you have traded Jessie Bates for a left tackle that would be an instant upgrade? And that would lead to an upgrade at right tackle. Let's not forget, if Jonah Williams plays right tackle, he is better than Akeem Adeniji. I know there's a lot of Jonah slander out there. There's a lot of debate on the internet and all of that. It's all hogwash when it comes to Jonah being a clear upgrade from what they've had at right tackle. And La'el Collins is a question mark. I get it. He still exists. I like La'el a lot. He's coming off of that ACL. So if you trade out safety, and that being a position of strength, for an offensive line that if Jonah's the right tackle, I don't really have many questions about. There are certain questions you could ask about Volson or Jonah's health, or, we could go down the list and some executives want to pick apart Orlando Brown. We could do that, but it's still a pretty darn good offensive line on paper. And so I'd feel good about it. And so that part of it, it's worth the trade-off. And I think the Bengals, looking at these departures, would say, all right, we had a in-house replacement for Jesse Bates and Dax Hill, whether that's fair or not. We went out and we got a guy, Nick Scott, who we think fits Dax Hill very well to replace Von Bell. We went and got Irv Smith to replace Hayden Hurst. The one external guy that they lost that they haven't really addressed is Samaje Perine. And they may even tell you, well, Travion Williams can have a more increased role. But I think that's the one where it's like, you didn't really address that. But overall, I think they're better in key areas. And, Eli Apple's still out there. They essentially replaced him with Sidney Jones. I think that's comparable, even though Eli Apple's obviously been more productive over the past 2 seasons and certainly last season.
He's getting paid less than Eli Apple got paid too. So the Bengals probably think that he's a little bit more of a backup, whereas they were comfortable paying Eli Apple a little bit more, maybe familiarity part of that, right? Maybe some extra factors there. But you're right about RB2. Deep drafted the position. Maybe they still make a veteran move there. Maybe there's a post-draft move there. Maybe it's just Travion Williams. I wouldn't rule anything out necessarily. I'm not necessarily expecting a move at running back. But it's an interesting claim that the team is better, James. They certainly have replaced Jesse Bates with a significant investment of draft capital, right? They had a highly invested safety in Jesse Bates that they replaced with a highly invested safety in Dax Hill, even if I don't think they played the same positions. Mm-hmm. Then they had a mid-tier investment in Von Bell that they replaced with a mid-tier to low investment in Nick Scott. From an investment perspective, because again, we've talked about this, I think they play different positions. I think Nick Scott is going to be primarily your deep safety. Dax Hill is going to be the guy they move around. Hayden Hurst, they continue their 1-year rental at tight end model, and they could very well draft a tight end, right? So they have these couple positions where, they've replaced safety. They probably got a little worse at safety, got a little bit better at left tackle. Maybe just got better at left tackle instead of a little bit as a qualifier.
Yeah, I mean, if it's Jonah last year, which obviously was his worst year, I think they got a lot better. But I also think Jonah would have been better this year.
And then questions at right tackle, largely because Jonah Williams may or may not want to do that or make that transition very well. The Bengals might end up trading him. I think that only happens if they have a replacement that they feel good about. But they were already really good. So here's the thing about when you're a really good team, when you're a Super Bowl contending team, it gets harder to get better in free agency because you have really good players and some of them leave, and sometimes you have to replace them with players who may not be as good yet or who may need to grow into those roles, which I think Nick Scott would be an example of this, where he has 1 year as a starter under his belt, doesn't have the experience of Von Bell, doesn't have the experience of Jesse Bates, probably needs to continue to grow into that role as a starter, right? Irv Smith has missed a lot of time. Will potentially be playing a lot of snaps at tight end. It's hard to get better when you're already at that level.
You don't think they're better?
Oh, I think it's very similar. I don't know that they're necessarily better, but I thought they were really good last year and have improved in some areas and gotten worse in others. And so which of those matters more to winning games? It's very similar to the conversation around running back. Like Bijan Robinson could
safety
make the
or
team
left
better.
tackle. You tell me.
Right. Left tackle for sure.
Yeah.
But when it's just it all kind of it's hard to distill and say like the entire team is better because they upgraded one position. You know what I mean?
Well, they wouldn't be better. That's why I had the Jonah qualifier. If Jonah just evaporated, if they just cut him and saved 12.6, they're not better now. Well, because it's a huge hole at right tackle. And I think that's what some people struggle to understand. They're better at left tackle, but now they have a big hole on their offensive line. If Jonah's the right tackle, which again, I think he will be, then you feel pretty good about it. So that is the big qualifier. Let's continue. I'm sure you have more thoughts. I have more thoughts. We will continue our free agency discussion and yes, tie in if the Bengals were to add a guy, who would we want them to add? We'll do that coming up next. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are almost here, and it's the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, super easy to use. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at an even bigger payout. So maybe you want to take LeBron James, the over on his points, the under on Anthony Davis rebounds, and the Lakers to win. You can do that with the same game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA.
Keeping it going with the free agency conversation. Let's do a quick grade before we talk about the one fantasy move, or maybe somewhat realistic move. We'll see how realistic we are. But overall, James, you think the Bengals are better now than they were last year because they've upgraded their offensive line, even if maybe they've lost some of that continuity in the secondary. I do think there are questions in the secondary. I do think it will be interesting to see how much that matters. Chidobe Awuzie's recovery, certainly a part of that. Will they draft a corner? A part of that. Cam Taylor-Britt's continued development. How these new safeties gel when they had the continuity and communication at the back end. So, you think the team's gotten better. I think it's close. I think it's interesting. I'm not ready to make big claims one way or another as to whether the team is better through free agency, but you can certainly say that parts of the team have improved, at least on paper. And obviously everything is on paper at this point in the offseason. So all that being said, where are you at for a grade if you had to assess on the GPA scale, F to A, for this Bengals free agency?
B plus. I would say B plus, probably like an 88% on the free agency test. You're not getting that A minus, but you're close. And a big reason why to me is, again, offensive line, you invest in it. I wanted them to invest in a star right tackle, and they went and got a guy who I think is better than any of the right tackles that got paid in this market. We'll see. And I know he's not perfect, but Orlando Brown Jr. is really good. And I think he's going to make Joe Burrow's life much easier. I think he's going to fit what they want to do on the ground, and Burrow's going to fit what Brown can do in his strengths. And it's going to make life easier on Cordell Volson as he continues to try to develop. So it was just a huge get. And then all of these other things. I think Nick Scott is a great character guy, someone who's going to come in and raise the floor of that position, help Dax Hill and develop. And I was high on Dax last year. I've made no secret about that. This was happening. Like, Bates was leaving and Dax was coming in. We knew it last April. And so the fact that it happened, it was inevitable. And so we'll see how it turns out. But if you're taking safety and instead of that being a strength, let's just say it's around average this year, and this offensive line is above average for the first time in Joe Burrow's career, I would take that trade-off every single day. Now, what I've loved, and we'll get to it, them addressing Samaj P. Ryan or being able to keep Samaj P. Ryan, yeah, I think that's actually a bigger loss than Hurst. I think there are a lot of tight ends that can do what Hurst can do. And you look around, there's a lot of running backs that can run. There aren't many that can earn Joe Burrow's trust and the trust of this coaching staff. I think that's much harder to do. And we saw that, and that's why he's been in Samaje in crunch time over the past two, deciding playoff games, the AFC title game this past year and Super Bowl 56 the year before.
Yeah, we'll see who's right about Orlando Brown too, because plenty of executives who Mike Sando talked to around the NFL don't know if he's a left tackle. Everybody. Some people think he's still a better right tackle than left tackle. There's some evidence for that, I guess.
Maybe he is. Maybe he's better on the right side, but he's good on the left side. I think that's the part that the Bengals are saying. They're like,
the Bengals feel like they're paying a fair price, right? They're not paying market setting money. to a tackle who should improve their left tackle position. They invested, and we wanted them to invest in the offensive line. That's great. I think that stylistically, the Bengals offense might be a better fit for Orlando Brown than is being given credit for by many. We've talked about this a fair amount as well. Joe Burrow, really good at getting the ball out on time, really good at dealing with pressure when he knows where it's coming from. I think that's part of why he praised La'el Collins so much last year, even though Collins was getting beat. At times, he was getting beat in a way that Joe Burrow could predict and he could adapt to and he could handle. And in addition to that, from a run game perspective, the power that Orlando Brown brings and the way that the Bengals have transitioned their running attack, the fit there makes a lot of sense too. So I'm on the side that Orlando Brown was a good signing. Overall, I would say I'm probably at a B.
Wow. I was thinking C for you, like an average grade. So above average. All right.
Yeah, above average. I mean, Orlando Brown makes it above average. When you can get the best tackle available and it makes sense and it fits the way that Orlando Brown does, I think that's good. I think that it could have been a little bit better had they, retained Von Bell for a couple of years there, had they addressed tight end with something that felt more solid than Irv Smith. Although I liked the Irv Smith deal at the time they did it, I would have liked the Mike Gesicki or Dalton Schultz deals for what they ended up signing if you're going to do a 1-year deal at the position. Now, I understand there were some cap constraints there for the Bengals on 1-year deals, but there's some things that they could have done that I think would have had a bigger impact on their 2023 hopes in free agency. And there's still some time too if they wanted to make another move. For example, my move that I would like to see them make is a little fantastical, a little out there, a little, there's no way they're going to do this, but
this sounds like my this sounds like my style. Let's hear it.
I think a lot of Bengals fans have talked about it too, and is trading for Sauce Gardner. No, I'm just kidding. It's going
That
out.
was good. That was good. I was like, all right, 28, next year's one.
Just a couple first round picks.
Sidney Jones. What else? All right.
Not Sidney Jones. But anyway,
Yes,
Dalton Risner.
You would, though.
No, they don't want Sidney Jones. It's not about the Bengals.
Oh, well,
so
yeah.
Why would the Jets take on Sidney Jones? Maybe Cam Taylor-Britt in a couple of ones, and then you're maybe
think so.
Talking.
I think they would say Jamar T. Joe.
They would want a lot.
Burrow, like it's one of those three. Otherwise, they're hanging up because
you're talking about one of the best corners in the NFL, if not the best corner in the NFL. Dalton Risner, though, the fantastical. The Bengals aren't going to pay money to a guard. I don't know what Risner's going to get at this point, him still being out there. The Bengals probably want to give Cordell Volson that second year to develop and show what he can be. Bengals fans certainly want to give Cordell Volson that second year. I mean, talk about a Midwest guy, right? Coming from North Dakota, endless grit in Cordell Volson.
Yeah.
And we know the people of Cincinnati love grit. Had some flashes as a rookie for sure. Wasn't consistent. There wasn't a huge discernible trend to me, an improvement in Cordell Volson over the course of the year. I mean, there were some for sure, but not to the point where I'm like, okay, yeah, Cordell Volson's your guard for 3 years. I'm not ready to Russell Bodine, ordain starter for 4 years on the rookie deal, Cordell Volson.
No, I think
so that's where I'm at with the Risner idea.
I think that's fair. A couple things. One, for Volson, I think he's already better than Bodine.
I think that is a take. I think that Russell Bodine was very disliked, but I'm not sure. I would have to. Cool. I would pump the brakes on that one.
I wouldn't, because what happened to him when he left the league or left the Bengals? I mean,
and we'll see with Volson.
It ended quick. Yeah, no, I agree. The thing with the Bengals is you have a cost-controlled guy, and this is why they're probably not going after Risner unless Risner wants to take this Sidney Jones, Irv Smith type of deal. What, 1.75 or 1.08, right? I mean, that's what they've gotten some of these guys for. I think they view it as a guy they believe in, that has the right character, built from the right stuff, and is going to continue to develop. And we'll see after this year, but I agree. I think he's going to get this year. That doesn't mean they won't draft an interior lineman. That doesn't mean they close the door on Risner. I just don't think they're like, all right, let's go get him to play left guard in 2023, be our starting left guard. I think he'll fit well alongside Orlando Brown, and let's see if he can continue to develop.
You have some thoughts on a guy as well, and it's going to tie into our last topic of conversation. So I'm not going to spoil anything because then it'll give away your guy. But let's get to James's pick. Very on brand to finish the show here. Coming up next.
Joe Burrow drops back to pass. Number 15, Ezekiel Elliott comes up and sticks TJ Watt. Burrow goes deep to Jamar Chase. Touchdown. Bengals. Well, the Steelers aren't even going to be in anything. I don't know why. I was just naming a really good edge rusher. The point
it's
is,
week 1.
Is Ezekiel Elliott. Yeah, it makes all the difference in the world, right? I think Ezekiel Elliott really does fit. And I believe that there are people inside the Bengals organization that think he fits. Now, the part that we don't know is the money. What does Zeke want? He obviously floated that out there, but that's my guy because that replaces Samaje Perine. Now, character-wise, can't speak to it. Haven't interviewed Zeke. I don't know. Does he fit that way? Is he willing to take a back seat to a rookie or to Joe Mixon or to whoever? I don't know. But I think he fits in a lot of ways, and I think he would work with Joe Burrow in this pass-first offense where he's capable of catching passes. He's still going to get the yards as a runner that are there. He can still help you in short yardage situations. Might not have that burst and that speed and be that 1,600-yard rusher anymore, but I still think he's effective in that department especially if you bring down his role a little bit. And then he's obviously an elite pass blocker. So Ezekiel Elliott's mine. And I actually think, and I don't believe this is a take, of Elliott and Risner, I think Elliott is still more likely today than Risner. If I was picking one being most likely that the Bengals do, I think that they would sign Zeke Elliott before they signed Risner.
That would be in a world where maybe they draft a running back. We drafted Bijan Robinson when he was available to us in Mock Draft Monday this week. So maybe they have a rookie. Maybe it's Bijan. Maybe it's Jahmyr Gibbs. Maybe it's Zach Charbonnet. Maybe it's any highly invested rookie running back, and they want a guy that they feel confident is going to be able to be
Israel Abanikanda.
Certainly, if you had Israel Abanikanda, you want a guy that can go out there on passing downs and you feel confident in, right? That has some experience doing that, who's done that at a high level. If you draft Roschon Johnson, maybe you're okay. Roschon Johnson, shout out. Can't help myself. Other Texas running back. But
people are drafting him earlier and earlier in mocks. Like third round,
could
child
be third
pleased.
round.
All right, and I'm child pleasing that.
I mean, that's just the nature of the business sometimes.
What would you is it? Is that the nature of the business?
Yeah.
All right.
Guys get drafted at different places.
Roschon at 92.
Anyway, there's a world where Zeke makes sense. Agree with that. Just like, we talked about with Bijan Robinson, there's a world where Bijan Robinson makes sense. And this ties into a couple of conversations that we've had this week and kind of goes back to that first conversation for me that we had today about, are the Bengals better? They're better at some positions, and they're probably better overall. You compelled me into that a little bit. Certainly. I do think it's hard to get better than you are when you're a Super Bowl level team. That's just hard to do. But you still have the draft. And Bijan Robinson would make them better, right? He would improve the running back position to some degree over what Joe Mixon and Samaje Perine were able to provide you last year, assuming that, the drafting of Bijan Robinson would mean moving on from Joe Mixon, which probably, right? The question is how much does that matter in terms of winning football games? We know a couple of things about the running back position at this point based on research that's been done in the last few years. We know that running back success is more dictated by number of defenders in the box, offensive line play, scheme, play design, play calling than it is on the running back, although the running back does certainly matter. Mm-hmm. We know that receiving is more valuable than running. We know that receiving is the most valuable thing that running backs can do, but even then targets are better serve to tight ends and wide receivers than they are to running backs. We know that year-to-year performance isn't very steady for running backs. We know that the transition from college to the NFL is very smooth for running backs. You get a lot of year-one contributors at a high level at running back. But I want to ask you some questions, James. When in the last, 5 years have you thought, the Bengals didn't win that game because their running back didn't play well enough? Let's start there.
Well, it's not. That's so they sucked and then they became a pass first team. So it's tough. And
that includes two Burrow years.
Yeah. And then they became a pass first team. One Burrow year, they still sucked. And they were awful on the offensive line and won 2 games with him. So could we go this route? We could. But I also think that trench play wise, they're better there.
Sure.
They're going to see a ton of too high, and they weren't able to run the ball effectively enough to get teams out of that. And so there are better fits out there than what they currently have. And
Sure.
So who is that? When is that? Right? Like, I don't think anyone debates they need to upgrade at that position.
Need is a strong word. I would say that it would be good to upgrade at running back. I don't know if it's critically important to the team's chances of winning a Super Bowl.
Sure, because you feel good about Joe Burrow. I get that. But you know what would make life easier on Joe Burrow? Not having to quarterback sneak it on 2nd and 1. It's the most embarrassing thing. They better not have to do that this year.
I don't think they have to. I think they like it.
They like it so they didn't have to be faced with 3rd and 1 because they sucked in short yardage.
They like avoiding 3rd downs. It's good to get first downs when it's 2nd down, but you can get them other ways in QB sneaking. I don't like the 2nd down QB sneak.
You know what should happen on 2nd and 1? Every single 2nd and 1 for the rest of time with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase.
Handing the ball to Bijan Robinson, of course.
A go ball, because Bijan Robinson can get you a yard every single time on 3rd and 1, and you know that.
That's obviously that's
of course, and you're not throwing a go ball every single time, but it would be nice to be confident in your short yardage game.
I'm not sure that adding,
and that's not why I would want. And that's not why I would want Bijan Robinson, by the way, to upgrade their short yardage game. I would do that because everything the Bengals thought they were getting with Joe Mixon when they drafted him 48th overall and took all the heat they took, that's what I think Bijan Robinson could be. This complete 3-down back, which Joe has never been. This guy who could play a ton of snaps early on and not 60%. I mean, if you want to play him more, you'd be able to 70% and not leave the field on 3rd down and 4th down and all of those downs, critical downs against the Chiefs, for example. That's what I'm saying. And I think if you find a guy like that, a special running back talent, it does make a difference. If not, if we're talking about Tajay Spears versus Israel Abanikanda, I'm not going to feel as strong about it. But if you're passing on, even Jahmyr Gibbs, if you're passing on one of these top guys and waiting a couple of rounds, well, that could make a difference. Like if the Bengals had taken Alvin Kamara, how much better would he had fit in this offense? In a different world, I get it. It hasn't lined up. But if 2017 Alvin Kamara came into 2023 Cincinnati, that would be wild. It would be a perfect fit.
Jahmyr Gibbs is what you're saying.
No, I'm just saying both fit. but you're telling me that guy wouldn't have an impact, right? Kamara 2017, of course he would. He would catch 85 passes and be Rookie of the Year.
I mean, there's an impact, and it looks great. But does it help you? Like, how much does it help you win games? How many more games do you win because you have Alvin Kamara instead of, I don't know, average running back? I guess Joe Mixon. Let's just say, how many more games do you win?
I mean, Joe Mixon isn't average. Let's not go crazy. He's still
last year.
Sure, but he's still he was last year. He's still slightly probably above average.
Probably. Most of that is that he's been mostly healthy in his career. He had 1 year, of course, where injuries were bad for him, but he's been on the field a lot, and that really helps because running backs generally don't stay on the field. And him staying on the field has helped him be, for the most part, top 12 running back in the NFL. Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. And I think it makes the difference Imagine having a game-changing running back. The Bengals haven't had one of those since Corey Dillon, and they sucked when they had Corey Dillon. Rudy Johnson wasn't a game changer.
They've still gotten game-changing plays out of their running backs.
Jeremy Hill wasn't. Giovanni Bernard wasn't. And I thought Gio might be able to be, and he wasn't. Not consistently. And so that's the difference. I think the running back argument makes sense until you're talking about an alien. And so there might be an alien available at 28. So and if they don't think that, if they don't think he's an alien and they think he's just really good, all right, then I get not taking him.
I'm just still waiting for compelling evidence that an alien at running back actually helps you win Super Bowls in the modern NFL. I just don't see it.
This is like the argument 10 years ago when people said elite wide receivers didn't matter because Tom Brady didn't use them. And like that's what it is. It's like, elite receivers don't matter. And I argued then it did. And
I'm not saying it doesn't matter.
But here's the thing with an elite running back. How many of them have gone to situations with good quarterbacks?
A lot. Because teams that think.
Who? Barkley, crappy quarterback. Dak was the best. Like Zeke got Dak a second deal. Like I know Dak's good, but that rookie year was Zeke carrying him a lot of it.
I mean, I guess I guess like freaks you're talking about, like Adrian Peterson.
It's just hard. And then they're paired with, it's like Corey Dillon. He was paired with awful QB play, and I'm going
because like Alvin Kamara played with Drew Brees,
and they were really good. They should have went to the Super Bowl.
But
Sean Payton's an idiot.
Drew Brees, right? Drew Brees, the Hall of Fame.
So there you go. And they were successful. And that was the end of Brees, but they were still successful.
But Mark Ingram is still like a huge part of their game. I don't know, man. I'm just waiting for evidence.
Maybe he shouldn't have been.
Probably shouldn't have. He was very efficient, though. The bottom line kind of comes down to the running back position. If you think running back is valuable in a game-changing position that can help you win football games, and you probably want to upgrade the position, right? If you think that running back is not very important in helping you win football games, you probably don't want to invest in as highly there.
Would Marshall Faulk be worth it at 28?
I mean, that's like Christian McCaffrey.
Christian McCaffrey would be worth the 28th pick if he's healthy. Of course,
probably.
He's got injury issues, but if you're getting rookie Christian McCaffrey at 28, oh my God, like unbelievable. Like it would be. So there are certain guys that are exceptions. I guess that's where we're. And so is Bijan an exception or not? It's up for the Bengals to decide.
I don't know. I don't know how good you have to be an exception for me. Like it has to be like Barry Sanders level stuff, like so much creation on your own. And maybe Bijan does that, but it's just so hard in the NFL to be that guy because of all the evidence we have. Wide receivers we know can create on their own. We know like we know about separation. We know about contested catchability, all these things that wide receivers do on their own. With running backs, so much of their game is and their output is controlled by factors that they don't control. And that's what continues to make it hard for me to want to commit big resources to a running back.
The Bengals have done it time and time again, though.
Second round picks.
28th and 38th. There's
I know you keep saying that. It's about opportunity costs. Like I said, there's a world where there's nobody else that is like compelling enough for me to pass on Bijan Robinson. But
yeah, like saying first round versus second, like first round's really edgy. Like saying it that way. It's the 28th pick.
It's the gap in the picks, though. It's if you take a running back at 28, you're going to have whatever other position we're considering is no longer very attractive at 60, most likely.
Sure. And would you have rather take a tackle that you don't fully believe in that ends up being Cedric Ogbuehi or?
Well, I mean, if you put it that way, of course you don't want Cedric Ogbuehi.
But so the point, you got to get the player right, which goes back to if Bijan Robinson or Jahmyr Gibbs, watch them take Jahmyr Gibbs 28th, is an alien
2.0.
Come on, man. Don't do that.
If they take him over Bijan?
Oh, no, I'm not saying that. I don't think Bijan's necessarily going to be there either.
Okay, I thought you were saying if they took Gibbs instead of Bijan Robinson.
But, yeah, that would be – now, watch it. He could end up being better. But, yeah, that part would be interesting, right? But I think there's value there. I think it's amongst the elite. So like Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase, right? The running back version. We're going to see some of those guys, and they're going to fall to quarterbacks with good teams. And the Chiefs, they might not have picked the right guy with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and everyone uses that. Okay, well, Bijan Robinson isn't Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And I think that's the part of it where if Saquon Barkley fell to 28 and he was a rookie, I think he'd be a game changer for this team. And that Bijan Robinson might be as good or better.
There's a lot to it. I honestly, I trust the Bengals coaching staff. I think any coaching staff in the NFL, when they have a shiny first-round running back, the temptation to hand him the ball on 2nd and 1 grows, which is also fine, I guess, because you get a first down most of the time there. But,
play action.
2nd and 10 runs.
T. Higgins
didn't
is
like
deep.
those before.
5 is wide open. Burrow hits him in
running
stride.
backs have nothing to do with play action being successful.
I'm not saying it necessarily does, but it would help them play action wise if they could actually run the ball effectively week in and week out.
A little bit. But again, lots of evidence that says running doesn't have much to do with play action, although teams really didn't buy the Bengals.
Let's throw it
so
every time.
Problem.
Every time.
No one's saying that.
Okay. So I would rather hand it to Bijan Robinson than, as
Yeah,
much as I like
again,
Israel
Abanikanda. It's an opportunity cost conversation. We have gone really long on this conversation. Let us know what you think about the value of running backs. Present me with evidence that explains why Bijan Robinson and investing in an elite running back would make the Bengals win more games.
You know what's going to be funny? When he breaks the rookie rushing record for the Bengals at Paycor. Not for the Bengals, like the rookie rushing record in a Bengals uniform at Paycor. And you have to woo afterwards. That is going to be hilarious, and I can't wait.
You haven't learned by now that people can't make me woo. Anyway, that would be fun. That would be great. I want the Bengals to win. If you can convince me that Bijan Robinson will make the Bengals win a Super Bowl, awesome. I would love to be persuaded because he's a fun player.
Marshall Faulk.
That's going to do it for this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. We'll be back the rest of the week, of course. We're going to get a mailbag in at some point this week. Until next time, Hoo day, and have a good one.